One.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 8th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Board for the Town of Chatham. My name is Catherine Halpern. I'm Chair of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. This meeting is being conducted by remote participation only, and in a few moments I'll read some points regarding that. This meeting is being broadcast live on Channel 18 and will also be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing. I do need to ask if anyone is recording the meeting. It's all right to record the meeting, but you need to notify the chair. So I'd like to just go through a couple of points regarding our remote participation meeting procedure. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order, imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Chatham Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. That's 1-508-945-4410. And the conference ID number is 581-957-166#. That's 581-957-166#. You may also join the meeting online using the Microsoft Teams app through the link in the agenda that's posted on the town website on the Planning Board page. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. And as I mentioned, a recording of the meeting will be posted on the town's website as soon as possible. I would like to ask everyone who is not speaking, except of course for the Planning Board members, to please disable the video on your computer and also to mute your microphones, whether you are connected by computer or by telephone. Planning Board members, whether or not you're speaking, please keep your videos on, but mute your microphones. When you're speaking, of course, you'll unmute yourself. Thank you. And then I'll just note that if you're connected by telephone and you inadvertently become muted, you can press *6 on your phone. So a couple of procedural steps. We'll begin with a roll call of all the Planning Board members. After we discuss each matter on the agenda, I will ask if there are members of the public or non-board members participating in the call who would like to make comments or ask questions. I will recognize you, then please unmute yourself. And before you begin speaking, if you could also repeat your name as well as the last 4 digits of your phone number if you're connected by phone. We just need to always clearly identify all the speakers in the meeting. And as I mentioned, after an agenda item has been discussed by the Planning Board, I will request if there are any citizens, non-board members who would like to ask questions or make comments. I'll also note tonight that any votes that are taken by the Planning Board will be done by roll call. And at the end of the meeting, we'll close with a verbal confirmation of adjournment, and we'll note the time of adjournment. So before we do the roll call, I'm just going to ask if there's any Planning Board members who need to recuse themselves from any matters on the agenda tonight.
This is Bob Dubus.
Yes.
Judge's Way. I was instrumental in doing the work down there.
All right, so you're recused from Judge's Way. Thank you, Mr. Dubus. All right, so let's do our roll call of the planning board members. Just let me know if you're present. Art Spru.
Art Spru, present.
Thank you. Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, present.
Tom Gagan.
Present.
Bob Wertschafter.
Present.
And Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, present.
And I understand that Roger Griffin is not able to join us tonight. And this is Catherine Halpern, and I am present. So with that, let's go to the first item on our agenda, which are the minutes from February 22nd. I will just ask if any board members have any changes, additions to the minutes.
Yes, this is Bob Wertschafter. I do, under the 776 Main Street vote, it has been listed as an aye, and I abstained on that.
That's correct. All right. So we'll make that correction that there was one abstention, and that was Bob Wertschafter. Any other corrections, additions to the minutes for February 22nd? We can note that Tom Gagan was absent from the meeting. All right. There being no other corrections or amendments, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment that was made by Bob Wertschafter.
Art Spru, I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
Warren Chain, I second.
Thank you. So we'll do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approved.
Tom Gagan.
Absent.
That's right. So you can abstain. Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Bob Wertschafter,
Wertschafter, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I approve with the amendment as offered by Bob Wertschafter. Next item on our agenda is the release of covenant bond statement of conditions for Judge's Way. Bob Dubus is recusing himself, and I believe Mr. Litchfield, will you be presenting on this matter?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of what is actually now a former property owner, Gloria Powers, in regard to what is essentially a housekeeping matter, the issuance of a certificate of compliance for a statement of conditions, which has been on record since 1995, should have been cleaned up years ago. You have in front of you a very, very thorough staff report from Ally, which states straightforwardly that all of the relevant conditions have been met. And in fact, the covenant was released a number of years ago, but the statement of conditions is still hanging out there. So we are simply requesting at this time a release of that statement. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. So let's just go through the board, see if you have questions or comments for Mr. Litchfield. Art Spru.
Art Spru, I have no questions, no comments.
Thank you. Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, I don't have any questions or comments either.
Tom Gagan.
Hey,
I'm sorry?
Tom Gagan, no questions, no comments.
Thank you. Bob Wertschafter.
After no comments or questions.
Thank you. And Bob Dubus is recused. This is Catherine Halpern. I also have no questions or comments. It looks pretty straightforward. I do think it is a housekeeping matter. So may I have a motion to release the statement of conditions and to approve the certificate of compliance for the approved modified subdivision plan?
Bob Wertschafter makes that motion.
And may I have a second?
Art Spru, second.
Thank you. So let's do our roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approved.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wertschafter.
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus has recused himself, and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. Thank you, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. So let's move to the next item on our agenda. We have a discussion item, which is to consider the action of making amendments to the planning board rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Chatham, Massachusetts. As all of you know, we've got a number of matters on our long-range planning agenda, and this is one of them. It's been on our agenda for quite some time. As you know, any changes that we would make to the rules and regulations regarding subdivisions do not need to go to town meeting for citizen vote, but they do need to be reviewed by the board and voted on and agreed to by the board. And then we do need to hold a public hearing, after which again we would agree to vote and agree to any changes that the board would like to propose. It has come to our attention in recent years, and some of you may not have been on the board at that time, but it has come to our attention that there are matters which come up in the review of subdivision approvals that are not adequately addressed by the rules and regulations governing subdivisions that we have currently in Chatham. And although we could say that the town of Chatham is largely built out and that the number of subdivisions we can anticipate coming up may be few, they do still seem to come up. So as your chair, I would propose that it may be good to begin to take a look at our subdivision rules and regulations. Since they do not need to go to town meeting for vote, the process is somewhat simpler than what we need to do for example, for the West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning, and also what we need to do for the scale and massing of residential structures. Nevertheless, there is a process we need to go through in order to do this. I want to mention to the board that our vice chair, Art Sprue, has volunteered to do a lot of the footwork and the drafting and research on this project. And then he would bring it up to staff and to me, and we put it on the board's agenda. The board will review it. Everything will be worked on by the board, but Arthur has volunteered to do a lot of the groundwork on it. So with that being said, Ali also included in our packet for this evening, just for the sake of comparison, the subdivision rules and regulations for our adjacent towns of Brewster, Harwich, and Orleans. So with that being said, I just want to open it up to discussion by the board. And I think what we want to consider is, would we like to go ahead with this project at this time and ask Art to work on some of the groundwork for us? And before we open it up to board discussion, maybe I'll ask Arthur, would you like to make any comments on this work, on this project?
Sure, thank you, Catherine. Haven't really looked into this in real detail. Not quite sure what are the most important things that we should pay attention to. Certainly, I would look for input from everyone from the board and Ally, others. I don't think the intent is to do many things or a complete rewrite of everything. It's a matter of providing more definition to some elements that we have encountered over the years. I know I hear comments from some of the other board members that, or even some of the applicants and their engineers say, well, that's not part of the regulations. It's not a requirement. And if we thought it was important, maybe that's something that we should include. So this could be a process where we seek input from many of the board members who have picked up a few things over the years in reviewing subdivisions or are there elements and saying, you know what, we should probably have something to cover this. Whether it's, you know, the aesthetic appeal, whether it's some definition on design. So I think the important thing to do is to find what do we as a board want to do, and then I'll be more than happy to take the steps of doing the research, working with others to come up with what is it that we're looking to do, put it down into some narrative, and then we all can review and decide whether those should be included or not included. So I think it's an iterative process here on this, but certainly I'm open to any kind of input from the board and what they're interested in seeing as part of this update.
Great. Great. Thank you, Arthur. So let's just go through and see if board members have comments, thoughts about beginning this process. Warren, would you like to make any comments?
Now, certainly, first comment would be that I'm very much the rookie on this subject, so I'm most interested in listening as opposed to proposing. But it does seem to me that we have ongoing activities that do require town meeting approval. Most immediately, I suppose, would be a draft zoning ordinances or regulations for West Chatham Neighborhood Center. And I would just suggest that it may make more sense for us to focus on items or item that may get to town meeting and defer until it is no longer possible to propose something to town meeting to talk about items which do not require town meeting approval. But that's just a comment on my part. I don't understand, because I have not been party to the issues that have been raised or the general sense of the board with respect to things that need to be added or changed with respect to the regulations on subdivision. But that would be my only comment. Maybe we should focus on what would get to town meeting until that's no longer feasible.
Okay, thank you, Warren. I'll just make a comment here that Ally and I discussed this quite a bit before bringing it up to the board. And what we determined is that we felt that this could be done alongside of our work on West Chatham Neighborhood Center without compromising that progress of those matters that need to go to town meeting. We thought that it's something that we could begin, and especially since Arthur volunteered to do a lot of the groundwork on it, that was our assessment, that we thought it could be done without compromising our progress. And of course, that's something we'll always keep our eyes open to make sure, and we would bring it into the agendas, into our meeting agendas as possible, without compromising. But that's a very important point, and we have to keep that in mind.
Well, in that case, no comments further. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you brought it up. And Tom Gagan?
Yes, Madam Chairman, Tom Gagan. I have two things for Arthur and the board to look into. One, I think, is a housekeeping issue. I noticed that almost immediately on page 2, we have reference to a gender. So I think that this document should be gender neutral. And I know that's an easy task for all of us to agree to. I've not gone through, I've colored a few areas where reference was to a specific gender. The second thing I have concerned about from one of our past experiences is I'd like to put a little bit more time and thought into boundaries and offsets, buffer zones, and have some teeth in buffer zones that may adversely affect those who are going to have to look at any subdivision that is going to affect the value and aesthetics of their properties.
Great, thank you, Tom. And how about Bob Wirtschafter?
Well, I'm not sure where this falls, but my frustration last time in terms of it seems like when somebody has a property, it's almost like they're forced into a subdivision by the only means of using that property. And I'm hoping that our discussions in West Chatham and this can at least give a hint to developers that there are other ways to take that property and we can help them build on that property and not divide it into 8 tiny little units when it makes more sense to develop it as one bigger unit.
All right, thank you. And Bob Dupas, your thoughts on beginning this process of taking a look at our subdivision rules and regs and making some amendments as needed?
Bob Dubus. I was skimming over some of the written work that Ally and you provided, and I didn't go too far in depth with it, but I noticed there were some things that I thought were interesting and a few others that I thought weren't interesting. Being other towns, some have more land, some have more different attitudes and problems than we do. But I think it would be nice to compare, or it was nice to compare a lot of the things that in our neighboring towns that could be adopted and talked about. I think that we could probably do this alongside the West Chatham corridor, and we might be able to pick up a few things for the West Chatham corridor in this, although it's going to be not the cart after the horse, but the cart before the horse a little bit. But there is still some land there that has some potential that might need a little bit of overview. So I think take it slow and steady and see what we can come up with.
Okay, thank you, Bob. That sounds good. Ally, did you want to make any comments about undertaking this project?
Not in particular. I know that the planning board's been wanting to take this on for a while, so I think it's good that we, can bring this forward, especially with Art's help. He can, he's very vocal about wanting to do some of the groundwork, so I think that is helpful. I do, obviously in our rules and regs now, there are some kind of, some housekeeping issues that we'll have to do, to bring it up to date. But I think that, overall we could do it, just like Art said, not a complete and total rewrite, but we could take things that we like from some bylaws or rules and regs and put them into ours. So I think that we can do it side by side as well with the West Chatham Neighborhood Center rezoning.
Great, yes. Yeah, I think good. So Warren, do you feel comfortable that we've addressed your concern? Because it's a very valid concern, and Ally and I did, consider it at some length, over some.
I'm quite satisfied as long as it's been thought about. Just wouldn't want to wake up and find out that we were halfway through something that didn't need needing approval, and therefore lost the opportunity to get something approved that does need it. That's all. But no, fine.
Good, thank you. Art, did you have another comment? Go ahead.
My Warren, just so you know, my experience on working with this on my previous board, as Ally is saying, there's housekeeping things that come up. There's some conditions that you would like to do on a particular application previously, and you really couldn't because there was no teeth in what we could do associated with that to, say, protect the budding homeowner. We made a laundry list, and at a specific period of time, we brought those forward and said, these are some things that we've experienced over the last year or 2 years. And then we figured out a way to incorporate them in the rules and regulations. Then it's a simple process of just holding a public hearing by the planning board that doesn't have to go before town meeting. If we hear any input that is inconsistent or the board wants to make some changes, then you do, and you just vote on it, and then you approve the changes to your rules and regulations. So it's a very simple process. But we postponed actually doing things because something else got in the way. Rules and regulations have the tendency to do that, and I could say that that would be the case here. Certainly, I would not want to interfere with West Chatham zoning. I would like to make sure that we advance that as much as possible. So if there's any reason to postpone this, it's not going to impact getting them done. It just means that we'll deal with it when we get through with some of the more important things. I don't view this as a priority that supersedes anything else. I think it's just one of the parallel things that if I can start the process off and help it a little bit, organize it, and then we as a board decide when we want to take it up. It can be taken up this fall this year. It could be taken up spring next year. We can take it up whenever we feel that it's sufficiently advanced to the point that it's worth our while.
Okay,
I'm certainly not going to stand in the way of what Art is up to. From what I'm hearing, it's not even necessary that everything that we might wish to change in terms of the regulations be done at once.
Right.
If you've got 4 or 5 things that are ready to go, and even though you've got a bunch more you're still working on, there's no reason we couldn't crisply bring those forward and then move forward at another time with the other thing. No, I'm fine with that proposal.
good, great, thank you. Any other comments from the board members? So my sense of the board is that we're comfortable with going ahead with this process. We could do a formal vote just to confirm that. So if all is set, I would ask for a motion that we begin the researching, amending our rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land for the town of Chatham to improve them so that they will adequately deal with all issues that do come up regarding subdivisions, and that they are in conformity with our comprehensive plan for the town of Chatham, and that Arthur Sprue has volunteered to do the groundwork on this project and will work with staff. And Ally and I will work it into our meeting agendas for the board to review the various amendments that would be proposed. So could I have a motion to that effect?
Madam Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second? A second to the motion?
Well, Art Sprue, I'll second.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arthur. All right, so let's do a roll call vote. Art Sprue,
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I approve that we get started with this process. Great. So thank you all for considering that. And as I say, Ally and I will work it into our meeting agendas, and we'll look at it all together as a board. So next item on the agenda is just sort of an update on long-range planning. We just wanted to let you know with regard to the West Chatham Neighborhood Center, Cape Cod Commission is still working on the revised draft and will bring it before the board, but also the issue regarding the runway protection zone with the Chatham Airport has come up, and Ally is working on setting up a meeting for the planning board to meet with some representatives of the Airport Commission Cape Cod Commission will also be present, and we will review carefully and in depth the situation regarding the RPZ and West Chatham so that we're very clear on it and that we can come to some consensus about what needs to be done, what needs to be considered, and what needs to be explicitly included in any zoning that we do for West Chatham. So that will probably be coming up in one of our April meetings. Then also, I just wanted to mention to the board that Ally's been working extensively with the Historic Commission. They are working on putting together a bylaw that will incentivize historic preservation. Many of you may be aware of that. And again, possibly in April, but again, we're not sure of the schedule, but we will probably be arranging a meeting with Frank Messina of the Historic Commission to review the work that they've done on the bylaw that they want to propose that will incentivize historic preservation. So that's something that's coming up. Ally, did you have any more points to mention about our long-range planning or our upcoming meetings?
No, I think that you summarized it perfectly. Thanks.
Great, great. And I should also ask if there's anyone from the public who's joined into the call who wanted to make any comments about any of the matters that we've discussed. I actually don't see anyone. I don't see anyone. So with that being said, if there's no comments from any board members, we could move to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn. May I have a second?
Tom Gagan, second.
Thank you. Let's do our roll call vote. Art Spru.
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, approve.
Tom Gagan.
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Wertschafter.
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, approve. Good to see you, Tom. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yes, we're enjoying the beard as well. And this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we adjourn the meeting. Let's note the time is 5:33. Actually, it just became 5:34. And we have adjourned our meeting for March 8th. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. And I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
you.